So I've had an interesting week. I, I've been having emotional difficulties recently. A lot of pain and stress and uncertainty more than anything. We've talked about we've talked about this before on the show. I I like many people who see the way things are going have checked out of the system. I ran away to the country. I found a house in a small community that protects each other, where there are resources to be to help us through whatever storm may come. And I was okay with that for a while. But now I find myself being yearning to do more. I have gifts, and those gifts are not big muscles to lift heavy things on a farm. I've got a good mind and I'm good enough at my job for that, but it's clearly not what I was meant to do. And I want to help others. I know people say this all the time, but I don't. I don't want to dedicate my life to doing something just because it makes me money. I can't, I can't do that. I could skate by, make a good amount of money what I'm doing, and I would know that my family and children are safe in the majority of circumstances in which we're heading, or at least have the best probability of a positive outcome. But I'm miserable. And I'm miserable because I know that I should do more. We've been doing this show, well, because of that, really. It was a while ago. I read a book that made me realize that if you don't speak when it's ever so slightly difficult, you're not going to speak when you're threatened with death. And it does increment from social shame to public arrests for speech.
Which have started happening.
Yeah. And it's only a matter of time from public arrests and fines to jail time to death camps. And I know that's extreme, but I've done the reading. And that's what happens.
It doesn't always go that far, but that's the way it goes if it does. And
if we don't stop it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If people who have the ability to see where things are going and the capability to speak and do something about it don't do that, then that's where it ends. Silence ends in gas chambers. And it's not, I don't want to end up there, but it's not about me. I don't want my family to end up there, but it's not even about them. I feel that I have a moral obligation to society to do something to help improve the chances of everyone's survival. Not just to try and look out for myself and just protect my family. We're not put here so that we can make money and spend it on self-indulgence. And we're certainly not given gifts when it comes to talents or intelligence or anything in order to exploit them for personal gain in status or hedonic pleasure. And I've been trying to figure out for a really long time what the hell I need to do so that this part of me is satisfied with my actions in the world. Partly that's this, and I think it's really important, and that's why we're on camera today. Because I can't hide in silence. I can't hide behind the black screen and the pretty pictures. I have to put my name and my face to it if I want it to have any chance of helping anyone. And yeah, people might come after us for speaking openly things that those with vested interests in things going in a dark direction don't want said. But it's not about me. When I die, I want to know that I did everything that I could to make the world a better place with the talents and the time and the opportunities that I was given. And right now, I can't say that because I've been wasting my time, my talents, and the opportunities. And the ones that I've taken were for personal benefit. This show is it means a lot to me, and I hope the words that we say are valuable to others. But this is always going to be, I think, casual conversation between friends with the internet listening. I'd like to do direct messages to the public. I'd like to get involved with politics somehow, although I have my concerns about them, which is what I'm going to ask you about today. I need to be more serious about this. I need to act more. Before it was fun. It was, even then it wasn't. Perhaps I've been practicing a bit of cognitive dissonance so far, knowing what this is and knowing why I should do it, and not really feeling it. The second the camera turned on today, the second that I knew I was being recorded, I could feel the weight and the pain in my soul.
There's something that comes to mind for me listening to you say this. um, Lots of these feelings are not voluntary, and they're not isolated. They are an almost universal human thing to have a sense of needing to do something. And for some people, that's a sport or a career or whatever, but
Calling.
yeah, a calling, I need to do this thing. And I feel like a lot of people would respond that or think that it's just about pursuing hedonic pleasures or pursuing some relatively arbitrary goal. Life's pointless, just find something to occupy yourself with until it's done. But this sort of thing is not. You can't bargain with it, you can't tell it to go away. These sort of feelings will eat you. And if you just ignore them and repress them, then they'll just eat you where you're not looking. And that pain and sense of worthless life or misspent life will come out in nights alone at a bar, or waking up in the middle of the night feeling terrible, not knowing why, or something. You can't hide from yourself, although so many of us try. And I think it was it Nietzsche that I heard said something like this, but the idea being that you can't escape the suffering, you can't escape the burdens, as much as I personally know that, and something I've been struggling with slightly recently, like sometimes you feel like you're holding up a weight and your legs are shaking and you don't have the strength to do it. And if you drop the weight, you might think that things will get easier because then you're not holding it up, you're not working so hard, things will be easier. But it would tear you in half in some real sense. It would be killing yourself to drop your burden. It's your burden. It's not that someone imposed it on you. It's that the need to lift that weight arose from within you. And the best we can hope to do is find a burden that we might be able to lift a little bit of, that makes the inevitable struggle and suffering worthwhile. It's not, you don't want to look back and say, oh, I had an easy life. You want to look back and say, it was hard as shit, but it was worth it. Every struggle, every mistake, every lesson learned along the way is not something that I would go back and change. That would be ideal. But then we all look back and say, yeah, I screwed that up. I was not enough. I was not good enough. And all we can do is find that burden and lift it. And I'm just hearing from you that sense of, I have a burden to lift that I'm not lifting.
I think it's hard for us in the modern age to accept things like this because we don't believe in anything.
Mm.
You know, once upon a time, people would have thought, God is calling me, or something of that nature. They would have taken their instincts, their motivations that are calling them to do actions that are not for their own pleasure and have risk to themselves, as something divine, as something sacred to be obeyed and worshipped and disregarded at their peril. But we don't believe in anything like that anymore. All we believe in is money. Rich are better than the poor.
Suffering bad, avoid. It's, yeah.
Well, yeah, but even then, the whole grind set stuff that's come out
Yeah.
is about endure your suffering, do this hard thing, do that hard thing, in service of becoming ultra productive so you can make money.
Yeah, the
So
mighty
there's
dollar.
still, it's the dollar gold has become God to most people. They'll sacrifice their lives, their families, in pursuit of money. You know, you ask any kid what do they want to be. I want to be rich. Why? I don't know. They say they want to buy this car or that car, but it's money that they're chasing. And yeah, there's the status thing and there's all that, but it's a pretty damn shallow game. If you're going to sacrifice your life for something, it really shouldn't be something that's that pathetic.
The idea of
I don't know. Yeah.
the god of the current society that we're part of being money just brought up the question in my mind of, well, what's that god's personality? Because so many things in our experienced world can be described as a personality. Like you see a little, like the car Granny would own, and like you've got a mental association that you can see the personality of that. It tootles along, it doesn't go very fast. You have a sports car that's got high grip tires, aggressive brakes, fast acceleration. Like you tap the throttle and suddenly you spin the wheels or something. It's got a different personality. And what's the personality of the god of money? It's almost, oh, that's an interesting image.
Great.
It's the starving man who starves no matter how much he eats. More is,
Nothing is never enough.
yeah,
It doesn't matter how much. Yeah.
yeah. There's a podcast that I think we both listened to recently, um, where the guy being interviewed had met rich people, and the people who had $1 million didn't think of themselves as the elites. They were worried about losing what they had, and so they still had that need for a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, and then you get lost in that, and then you compare that with the idea of someone who doesn't pursue money but has pursued their calling quite possibly at great cost, and at the cost of money, at the cost of other opportunities, at the cost of health, and they can sit there and they're content by the end of it. And we're a fair way from that given our relative youth. Like, I recently turned 30, so I've still got a fair way to go, and I've got a 5.5-year-old son, but yeah, you want a life that you can look back on and say, I'd be happy to live that again. And pursuing money, it just feels so hollow.
Well, you're here, and one day you won't be.
Mm.
Life is a terminal disease. I kind of hate that line, but still, it fits in some ways. You're gonna die anyway. No one will remember you, most likely. And if they do, it'll probably be for the wrong reasons. Your children will remember you for a time. Maybe their children, but not their children. What are you doing here? Everyone's always running around going, what's the point of life? What's the point of life? The real question is, you're here. What are you going to do? You're going to live it up for 80 years? Or sit in the corner protecting your little pile of nothing? I don't know what I'm going to do, but I feel like I have a calling to do something more. Part of that's this, part of that's direct addresses I'm going to make. I'm going to do my own channel as well and talk there and here. And the third part is something political. And that's what I wanted to really talk about with you today, because I have a real concern about the political. And it's that anytime anyone does anything political, they're immediately dragged down from the place of meaning to the place of mundane.
Mm.
I I think anyone of significant importance, with perhaps the exception of Peterson, but even then, that's a massive maybe, would become nothing more than another politician seeking their own power the second they step into that ring.
Any who don't seek power for themselves are just walked over by other people. So it's almost baked into the system that even if you're seeking power for the right reasons, if you want to do anything, you first need to seek the power to do things with. And if you don't, those who want power for their own sakes will take it from you.
There's no doubt that the system is designed specifically to select exactly the wrong people for the job. And there's another part of my troubles with the world that I'm going to talk about another day, but there is no avenue for a young person who wants to help make the world a better place through attempting to fix the biggest problems in the world, to do so through any of the traditional institutions. Almost all professions are broken and corrupt. Certainly, effectively every university system, almost certainly every Western government, the majority of large corporations. There's no path where a young person, except perhaps this one, can stand up and say, I want to change things for the better. All we're told is, shut up and go to work, and maybe you can make things better in your job, serving some corporate master.
I do think it's worth tempering that with that doesn't mean that tearing down those dysfunctional institutions would make things better.
No, no. It would present an opportunity for a small chance for things to get better when things came back together. But not only would you be paying for that opportunity with the blood of millions, the likelihood that you'll get something that's better than what we have is effectively zero. It's not the way to go about it. And in a state like that, it's be the most brutal that will take power. And, that's going to be worse than it is now.
An example that comes to mind, as though part of me thinks it's worth adding, so I will. The result of tearing down the institutions. The There was a clip I saw where they played it. Someone was playing it in the U.S. Congress or something, but it was a child transition surgeon, plastic surgeon, talking about how he would perform these surgeries on minors or adolescents who'd had puberty blockers. And he was talking about how for young boys who'd had puberty blockers and so hadn't developed down there, in order to do the plastic surgery to form female genitals, they would take a piece of the small intestine and use that as the lining and construct something there that would do the job. And how much more Frankenstein do you need to get? And there's going to be a generation of people in 5 years or less, probably, who are suing the people who've been doing this because, like, by the UN definitions, if you go back 5 or 10 years before this was the cultural force it is now, the definitions of, like, I forget the precise one. I think it was a crime against humanity to do medically unnecessary surgery on minors who cannot consent. Like, you don't do plastic surgery on minors because you think that they'll look better if you give them this or that plastic surgery. Like, they, especially not radically reconstructive things like that. It's the argument used to support it is that these people will basically commit suicide if you don't. The evidence does not support that. And on the contrary, I need to look up the study so I've got the raw numbers, but from what I heard, if you track people after the surgery who get gender transitioned surgically as adolescents, initially the suicide rates go down because they've had all this attention paid to them, they've had all this stuff done that they were told would make things better, and then things fade away and it's the everyday realities of life after that that they have to deal with, and the suicide rates go up to 40 times the background average, is what I recall hearing. And I need to look up this data myself so I'm not just quoting something I heard, but it kind of makes sense. These people who've had this puberty block and transition surgery trauma are unable to feel anything sexual. That's a category of adult human experience which is now closed to them, which it is fundamental to our nature. Every single one of your ancestors got together and had a child. Every single one. And you're taking that away from these children. It is foundational, that depending on what you believe, all the way back to Adam and Eve and the way God intended, or evolution and all the way back for billions of years. Like, there's going to be a hell of a karma to pay, whichever way you interpret that word. Whether it'll be by the courts or by God or by something else, there's going to be I've been working on developing the ability to get angry about things that are worth getting angry about rather than just being passive, and that's making me angry.
Well, it's good. We have been talking about that, and it's good to see that. Yeah, there are things in life that should definitely make you angry, and that is one of them. These issues are massively important, and people need to talk about them. And I imagine you can feel it yourself, and I'm sure any of the listeners can as well, that there's a change in feeling when you went down that route of talking about that particular issue. And I think that's what I was getting at with my point, is that there are many issues that we need to work on and that we need to solve, and that anyone who is serious about trying to help and trying to solve wants to tackle those issues, naturally. And you can think of many other ones as well. But the second you start to talk about any issue in particular, almost everyone switches off, or they get this sense of, oh, another political speech. You know,
We've been desensitized to rhetoric, which in its original form was
Yes,
just public speaking, but now it's been debased into I want to convince you to
rhetoric.
do this thing.
Yes, it's manipulation. It's hollow. It's like when you listen to a podcast and someone who's running for office comes on and they speak in pre-written quotes. Someone's asked them a genuine question about how they're feeling about this upcoming thing, and they'll go, well, I think three things about that. Number one, but even when it is genuine and off the cuff, the reaction is, here's another person making a political point to try and win status, power, respect. Oh, aren't I so clever? I know the right thing over someone else in the debate. We've had so much politics in our lives. Perhaps this is different. I don't know about people who are older than us. But for me, it's been my whole life. People won't shut up about things like this. It's all over the TV all the time. The fights, the arguments, the drama, the debates.
There's also that
It's like replacing religion.
whenever you talk about one thing that is a worthy cause, you're accused of ignoring another thing that's a worthy cause. And whether or not any particular thing is a worthy cause is something that needs to be debated openly and discussed so that we can share thoughts and think, because without that you cannot fully think. But
It's
yeah,
almost it's almost like getting into the detail of your particular attempt, your particular policy to solve a problem is a lesser form of thinking than
moral posturing.
posturing. That doesn't feel right. It's whenever we hear a politician come out and speak, it is clearly something that is less than when we hear one of our public intellectual or philosophical figures come out and speak. It doesn't matter what politician Jordan Peterson interviews. You can tell that they're playing two different games, that they're thinking on two different levels, and it's clear as day that one is superordinate to the other. Like there's a form of thinking that can encompass the political sphere, but that is greater than it. And when someone starts talking as a political commentator or advisor or running for some form of office themselves, it's like they're constrained down into this tiny wee area and they become inconsequential. It doesn't grip people. It's like the internet argument thing. People are not inspired by what we consider the political. They hate the other rather than wanting to follow the one. People hear the political rhetoric and they're not getting there going, wow, that's amazing. I feel really called to this guy. He inspires me. No, they're thinking, oh, well, that makes sense. And I hate the other person because their list of policy, rhetoric, whatever, is something that's vehemently opposed to me. And I can see how it would be very easy to manipulate and control a population through some form of uniparty doing something like that. If you control both voices, then all you need to do is set up a puppet for the other side to be angry enough at to vote for their side. And it doesn't really matter what the people on their own side, the policies are. because blue people are going to vote for blue and red people are going to vote for red. And it doesn't really matter whether the blue people are blue or the red people are red.
It's like their core
There's
policy is we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And every time you rev up the lower emotions, if you get people shouting about being angry, or you say angry at that, happy about this, and you play those off against each other, even though you say it with flowery language, it's like that's all you're saying. It's like bad thing, good thing, yay.
and maybe that's what we sense. There was
Mm.
a bit that I heard about it. I don't remember who it was. I think it might have been James Coghlan, Freedom Tunes, had a bit about good thing, bad thing. Some political person's asked a question. What do you think about this, this, this? And then they try and give an answer. And then the other side goes, he wants bad thing. Everyone's bad thing. Everyone's bad thing. I want good thing. Like, that's all it is.
Yeah, I've heard it described as what was it, cold prickly words and warm fuzzy words and thought stoppers, like statements that don't quite make sense, and so like a spanner in the gears of thought, they sort of stop you going any further. And if you have never had that pointed out and never understood it, you'll not realize that it's a problem.
It's a great, I just thought of a great analogy that popped into my head. There was a fairly ridiculous comedian a while back who had a bit about country songs. About how all of a sudden they started to be written by like really rich people who had never done hard work in their lives and were from the city. And he made a point about them finding all the keywords that they needed to hit and throwing in just the right sort of pandering instruments here and there throughout the melody to hook those audiences. And then he sung a song about that he sort of made up on the spot. Just, what was it? I shouldn't do the bit. He's describing a truck and a bear and a dirt road. And then he does it even better. And he goes, what was it? Like a rural noun, a simple adjective. And he does it in the time of the song. And the point is, you can construct bait for people to bite. And these people did it through music, and politicians do it through language. I will construct a perfectly formulated sentence that you cannot object to that will potentially get you to vote for me and piss off the other side.
Yeah,
whatever their goals are.
I think that's why
It's not
people are liking Trump,
genuine.
because he just sticks a middle finger in both directions.
Yeah, he showed up and he said, well, this is what I think. And yeah, some of it was dumb, but it wasn't scripted.
Yeah. And the more they arrest him,
actually,
the more popular he gets.
Yeah. He had a bit of a middle scene there where he started getting scripted, and that's when his favorability dropped. And now he's all bad boy again, and he's pulling the finger at everyone. And to be honest, that's what we need in politics. Not someone with his policies, but a person who is an actual human being and not some construction designed to manipulate the public into voting one way or the other.
Oh, I'm just thinking of Oliver Anthony, and have you seen what he's doing?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so you know the basics behind the North of Richmond song?
Oh, yes. Is
Yeah.
that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw his, I listened to his Peterson interview. It's very interesting, though.
Yeah, he had a little video he put out recently. He pulled over on the side of the road and recorded on his phone saying, "Don't buy the tickets for this show of mine. I'm pulling out because they're charging too much." And the company who was putting on the show put out a thing blaming him for it. But he'd said, "I'm pulling out, they're charging too much. I'm sorry, this is on me. I'm not going to point any fingers. I'll work to do better next time." And then the ticket company blamed him, and oh, the thing that I think is refreshing about him is he is not scripted to the degree where he actually screws up, says, "Oh F, I screwed up. Sorry, let me try and fix this." And like he was saying that he would refund anyone who'd bought tickets from his own pocket because um, he thought $90 was too much for a ticket, and so on. And then the left were the party of the working man and the supporting the lower classes are beating on him because he's a far right extremist or whatever, and some Republicans tried to claim him as one of their own, and he's just like, both of you fuck off. No. And that's the sort of thing that's getting traction, and people are recognizing it. And I think there is people get used to being manipulated and then become immune, just like an immune system getting hit by new toxins and getting used to them. Like you can, by gradually exposing yourself to small amounts of poisons, you can get tolerant to them, so you're not poisonable by them anymore. And there's people in history who've done that and then failed in committing suicide because they'd become immune to the poisons. But it's that sort of thing on a psychological level of we've been manipulated for so long and advertised at for so long. The advertisements are getting flashier and brighter. The billboards now have moving pictures on them instead of just the static ones, and we're getting immune to it, not by any special process, but just by exposure and getting used to it. And so the natural response, the natural pushback of, yeah, we're not listening to that. Just something real will actually resonate, but we won't listen just because it sounds good.
That's something I've really noticed with the online landscape for, well, so say YouTube, for example. Podcasts included, even music to a certain degree. There's two camps. And one is manipulate, chase the algorithm, in which case it's almost always targeting children. And the other side is be genuine. And what I see is there is a massive hunger for people who are genuinely who they say they are, who will speak publicly about anything, whether that's of importance or not, simply because they're interested in it and they want to share it. Or they think it's important and they want to address it. And I think what we're hitting at is that we are starving for genuine voices in the public sphere. We have many cropping up in public intellectual space, which is amazing. And I think it's going to do wonders for the world. But we don't have that in the political space. We have a partisan commentator, and we have many people seeking for their own power who have maybe once had good intentions but play the game.
There's something along those lines, well, sorry, related rather than along those lines, that someone I like to read has said a few times, that politics is downstream of culture. As in, the political leaders like to think they're leading the way, but all they're really doing is following along where the cultural currents led. But they're always a lagging indicator. They always follow where has already been walked, and not for a while until after it's walked.
That's what makes them politicians and not leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah. A politician follows the poll.
Oh, I like that. Politicians.
Politician. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get that. I just thought of that. We need leaders. You know, I've been talking to my wife about this. I've been talking to, well, anyone who will listen, which is very few people. I feel a call to do something political, but I don't want to just go and help some party because they're going to make me play the game.
Mm.
Or they're going to try, and I'm going to refuse, and then I'll be booted out, which would be fun, I suppose. If I ever get into any kind of political situation, I will never allow myself to be a politician.
Mm.
I don't want to be a politician. I want to be a leader. And yeah, I know, arrogance, whatever, I don't care. There are very few things that I can do. And I find that I have a skill set and I want to try and do something with it. I don't know what that is. I have my concerns about politics, as we've been discussing, and I'm sure we will more.
You mentioned
I'm not
arrogance.
announcing anything.
Yeah.
Yes, the humble arrogance thing.
Yeah. Yeah, like in that podcast that we both, the Modern Wisdom podcast we both listened to recently, they were talking about a sportsman of some kind, I think. I'm not sure what sport he played, but I think boxing maybe. But he was arrogant enough. You need a sense of arrogance to think that it's worth even trying whatever the thing is. Like, if you're utterly humble and self-effacing, you'll never think you could become a world-class boxer or make a difference of any scale or anything. But at the same time...
You shouldn't be apologetic for your skill or talent, and to not use it for the benefit of the world is not moral. Humbly sitting in the corner saying, well, I'm no good to anyone, is useless and pathetic.
There's
not
more...
helping.
Yeah, that point, I think that's a missed point, that humility or arrogance, it's the wrong question. Hang on a minute. I'm not sure where this is going to go, so let's see. But the idea that you have something to offer, which varying levels of uniqueness, right? 8 billion people on the planet, there's going to be other people with basically the same set of abilities. But the idea that saying I couldn't make a difference, or that there's some sort of good in, I guess it's being harmless. It comes back to that point, the idea that harmless is not good. That, right, say being humble to the point of, oh, I'm just a small person, I'm not going to make any difference. It's like
it's very convenient to keep you slaving away at your job.
Yeah. There's
to not make a ruckus in society.
Oh. There's a secondary scale hidden under there. Like, we've been talking about the arrogant versus humble scale, but there's a competent versus incompetent scale that's been hidden under that, and sometimes it aligns and sometimes it's opposite. So something like that. If
someone thinks that they can do something and they can't, thinks they can do something well and they can't, are they arrogant or are they just wrong?
I think they're arrogant if they refuse to recognize it repeatedly. Like, so if you...
Like someone who thinks they're an amazing singer who isn't.
Yeah. Like, if you have been told all your life by friends and family, like, oh, wow, you've got an amazing voice, and then they go out and meet people who've actually trained to sing, who are like, no, you're doing all these things wrong. Or like the kid who takes photos and then thinks he's great at photography because his friends and teachers say he is, and then he shows up at a photography competition, oh, your composition's wrong in this way, and so on. It's like...
That's it right there. The arrogant person disagrees. Someone who is arrogant thinks everyone else is beneath them. I don't need to listen to your criticism. I'm better than you. That's arrogance.
Yeah.
Someone who says, I'm really good at this. I have this skill and ability, and I'm going to go and do stuff. And when people say, well, what if you're wrong? Well, maybe. But I should still try.
Yeah, because it's like arrogance and competence on at 90 degrees to each other. You can be arrogant and competent, and sure, you can do the thing you say you can, even if you say it arrogantly. If you're humble and
which is
incompetent, then, well, you've got an honest assessment of your ability. You can be
someone
humble
who's
and competent.
yeah, I think someone who is not arrogant, someone who is humble,
Hmm.
should be someone who is simply respectful of others.
Hmm. But you need a little bit of
Considerate.
arrogance to think that what you have is of value. Like, it's just to.
Yeah, yes, you need to be self assured.
Hmm.
It's a really it's a fuzzy area. Hmm. I don't know if we're gonna get anywhere with that. At least not today.
Yeah.
We're a little short on time today, so we're gonna try and keep it brief, and then we'll undoubtedly pick this up next time.
Yeah.
There's so many pitfalls in this place.
Hmm.
The system is designed to keep people down and in their place. And we, as the people who are down and put in their place, love nothing more than to drag everyone else down to make sure we all stay here. Anyone who tries to escape the place that was forced upon them is attempted to be brought back down.
Tall poppy syndrome, or in Japan, I think the associated thing is the nail that sticks up is the one that's hammered down. So if you've got a floor and one nail sticks up, the idea being do your
Yeah.
job and don't stand out.
Yeah.
There is a value to that. You need people cooperating and being part of the team. But,
No, I disagree.
yep,
Enforcement cost. If you have a society where people do their duty voluntarily without the threat of being hammered down and without artificial constraints or the system itself being designed such that you can't do anything else than work at the minimal level, you're going to have a more inefficient society. If people voluntarily shouldered their burdens and did the best that they could, even in their menial tasks, not because they were forced to, but because they chose to because they loved their country or their society or their structure or that they cared about fellow humanity. That society will outpace any others. Someone who chooses to do a lowly job because it works for them for whatever reason will do a better job at that job than someone who chooses it because they have no other choice.
yes.
You know, a person who chooses to be a garbage collector for whatever reason, someone will choose it, will do a better job at that than someone who has to be a garbage collector because inflation and tax rates are so high that he can't make more money doing anything else, that there's no opportunity for him to move forward. We've systematically stripped opportunity away from every successive generation for the last 50 years. We have nowhere left to go.
On that point,
These,
there was a thing I saw recently. Someone uh, doing very basic inflation calculations, just looking at how the price of things had changed over time, had come to the conclusion that over the last few years, I think he'd looked at it from 2020 forward, it's been like 12% of inflation in New York, I think he was looking at. 12%, that's doubling the prices of everything in less than 10 years.
yeah, I'd love a 12% raise.
Yeah. And then people
Yeah.
say, oh, the official inflation is 4%. Okay, you'll get a 5% pay rise. It's like, yeah, no, you've lost.
Yeah,
And
and 5% is lucky. Everyone's getting like 2% every 2 years.
yeah,
Yeah. The wealth is being extracted from everyone who can be taken from.
It reminds me of what I heard about as a cycle in the society, that the rich class would increase their ability to extract and concentrate wealth from the rest of the society until they got a whack over the head and forced to sort of play fairer, or there's a revolution. And there's been like 2 or 3 cycles of that so far in the US, was the context of what I was hearing it in. And the Great Depression period was the last one where that happened. And then there was a president who was elected around then who was very unpopular among the rich people. Like, they hated him. And like Trump. And
that's what we need.
yeah. Whether he has the intellect or the right ideas to fix things, I think he, in a bull in a china shop way, will open the way for someone who actually listens to people and has the nous to make it work to get in. But I think he's a necessary stage.
He was better than another scripted puppet.
Yeah.
But what we need is someone who has that ability to say no in such a ridiculous fashion, who's a real leader. Say what you want about Trump. I don't think he was a leader. Not in the way that word should mean something.
Yeah. He's a convenient brick to throw through the window of Congress and the White House. And
yeah, he went there because he wanted to make things better, because he wanted the fame and glory of doing it for him.
yes.
He was a self-motivated narcissist. But because of that, he was willing to pull a finger at everyone, and that's what was needed. What we need is someone of the caliber of Jordan Peterson or any of these other public intellectuals in the podcast space to be willing to stand in that place and not capitulate. And all I see is every single one of them saying, no, I won't do it because what I'm doing is more important. And they're not wrong, clearly, from what we described before. Devolving into the political space is not something that people like that should be doing. But the problem is, with all of these people, all of them will say, here's what we all need to do. And then they pass the buck on to everyone else. I'm doing my part by telling you all to go and do your part. And yes, that works if everyone does it. I get that. But sooner or later, somebody has to actually step into the fray and do the political action.
Yeah, it's part of the... What is it?
We can change all the populace and all the voters all we like, but we still need a representative.
The other part...
who's actually willing to embody what the populace wants if the populace was enlightened.
Yes, so the other part of politics being downstream of culture that I talked about, as it was presented where I read it, was that imagination is upstream of culture. So it goes from imagination to culture to politics. And the...
Vision.
Sorry?
A person needs to have a vision in order to change culture.
Yeah. And
usually through art.
And we need the stage of the public intellectuals to grab onto the ideas and spread them before there'll be enough of a public will to elect the leader. Because if the leader, in quotes, comes along before the population thinks they need him as a whole, then he'll just be ignored and laughed off. Like, if Trump had gone against Obama, he would have lost, I think.
Yeah, we weren't ready.
Yeah.
You need a person to emerge at the right time and place. And these people that are the public and intellectual space, they are doing the best thing that they can do right now. They're right. That is the best thing they can do. And they are establishing platforms on which they can pitch potential people. You've noticed it already, is that they're starting to interview a hell of a lot more politicians.
Mm.
And those shows make or break those politicians. The second that they come on and start doing their political spiel like they would on TV news, they're done. Done.
Yeah.
Because every single person who is a free thinker listened to that and went, oh, it's just another politician from the bygone era. Fail.
And then
Out
people
of my consideration.
and then people watch those, they take clips of it, they do an analysis of it, and here he said stuff that doesn't make sense because it was an hour-long podcast, and so they look through it and get the scripting and see through the lies and see through the
You can tell in
facade.
5 minutes. You can tell in 5 minutes he'll ask a question,
Mm.
or Rogan, or any one of these people will ask a question, and they'll get a political response, and then I will delete the episode off the bat with that. It's like, nope, done. You failed. Unless you're willing to actually have a conversation, you're not a legitimate candidate. There's been like 3 that have been interviewed so far that actually are. And that's the way to go. But someone who shows up too early doesn't get the job. Think about it with technology. There's people that have tried to do the technologies that we are doing now 5-10 years too early. And the technology wasn't ready and it fell apart and failed. The vision was there, but it didn't have the support it needed. And the same in politics. The right visionary leader won't be elected until enough people are ready for him. Or at least sick of the shit that we have. I think we're approaching that point, but I don't know if we are there yet.
Well, a positive sign on that front, there was a video I saw recently pointing out that CNN, the main cheerleader for the official Uniparty, on the
In the States.
Yeah, in the States on the Democrat side, they were starting to point out Joe Biden's lies, like his just false statements about his life, and sort of listing them off. And it's like, so they're taking him down because they can't handle him anymore, and they want to put in someone else, not sure who, but it's...
Yeah, plans training. The problem is that you know it's a plan.
Yeah.
That's the problem. No matter what it is that no matter whoever it is they end up pushing, you know that they're another plant. And we're sick of plants.
Oh, 2 versions of that word. Plant as in leafy green, and plant as in someone placed there by others with a hidden agenda. Biden's both.
Yeah, if ever you go to plant something in someone else's house, you're never doing it to do them a favour. And like it or not, government is the house of the people. House of Commons. We don't have, with maybe one exception in New Zealand, a leader who is a free thinker, a free speaker. I'm not announcing for office. That's not what this is. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I know that I can't do nothing. Because I won't be able to live with myself if all I ever do is go and make money and then go and spend it to try and comfort my pain. And I thought that having children would be the meaning that I needed to help raise them and care for them. It's not enough. Like you, since I was a child, I wanted to save the world. And yeah, that's silly. But you know what? If you had to pick a goal to aim at, to sacrifice your life for. There are worse ones.
Yep.
Better that than to save yourself. And I think that's where we should say goodnight.
Yeah. Well, short and sweet, and we show our faces to the world.
Yeah. Again.
Yep.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time and attention, everyone.
Yep. Hope it was interesting and thought-provoking and... yeah. Anyway.
Start of something new, hopefully.
Yep. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.